Hello BookTube. Well, I'm back, and this time my absence is not my fault. We have been experiencing what in South Africa is termed load shedding, which throughout the rest of the world I think is just called power outages. And my town has been hit the worst in the country apparently, according to the newspapers, because every 3.5 hours we get hit for 4.5 hours with no power. So in those short 3.5 hours, man, you can see us washing machine, vacuum cleaner, making supper, because I always cut the power over lunch, and for 4.5 hours over lunch, it's a long time to wait, and supper, and breakfast actually too, but I'm on holiday, so breakfast can be a bit later, which is fine, so long as there's coffee, man. So yeah, it's just been a bit crazy here, and then on top of it, I actually logistically can't make a video, because although I can film from my camera, which I'm at my phone, which I'm doing at the moment, I am not prepared to sacrifice my only connection to the outside world so that I can make a video, because once the batteries on this is dead, it's dead, and filming takes quite a lot of battery power. And then the second thing is that I convert the video so that it uploads faster, because I don't have a fast internet connection. So if I upload it from the iPhone, it's then over 2 gigs for a 20-minute video, 1 gig for a 1-minute video, a 10-minute video, and that's going to take 8 hours to upload. And quick maths there says, but you only have 3.5 hours of electricity, and I go, yeah. I also don't have time to render the video once I've converted it, because that also takes a lot of time too. So I've been sitting with my hands tied. I haven't even really had time to watch much in the line of YouTube videos or BookTube, because there just isn't that time. I've got to get other things done while I can with power, and then when I end up with no power, then I've got all the time in the world and all I can do is read. So this wrap up is going to be quite long. I might end up breaking it into 2 parts. We'll see what happens. If I do, just go with the flow, hey? Okay, so as I said, I've had a lot of time to read. When we went on holiday, I was 7 books behind schedule according to Goodreads. I am now 1 ahead, so that's pretty awesome. And yeah, I ended up deciding I was going to do March Mystery Madness, Middle Grade March, and the Marching Mammoths, because if not, why not? I'm still busy with that one though. So the first book I want to talk about is Agatha Christie, The Murder at the Vicarage. Now this is the first one in Miss Marple. Now I know that I was reading Agatha Christie when I was 9, and that's because I had a particular friend who I was friends with at that time before they moved, and she and I would swap Agatha Christie's, or else we would head off to the library together and she'd return and then I'd take out, vice versa. So we were constantly talking about Agatha Christie. We were a bit on a phase at that point in time, and I was sure that I'd read Miss Marple. I'm sure I must have, but I can't really remember it because it was 32 years ago. And yeah, so I was quite surprised when I picked this one up that you don't follow Miss Marple. In fact, you follow the vicar, because there is a murder at the vicarage. And this actually works out pretty well, because the vicar was in the right position. He knew a lot of the dirty secrets around the town. Well, tiny little village. Yeah, tiny little village. And so he knew a lot of the secrets that needed to be hidden, and because it happened at his vicarage, he was in connection with the police that were involved. Of course, you've got the cliche, you know, the bumbling cops who know nothing, don't know how they managed to keep their jobs, especially with little old ladies like Miss Marple in town. And as I said, this is the first Miss Marple, and this is her first murder mystery that she's going to solve. And yeah, I can see why we didn't follow her. I was disappointed until we finally did spend some time with her right at the end, and she pretty much solved the whole thing in 6 pages. And it would have not been as fun to read Miss Marple just going, well, it was da-da-da-da-da-da for these reasons, and you're going, okay, because this way we got to play along as well. So this was pretty cool. Yeah, I had my money set on the young lady in this. I know the spoiler, it's not really a spoiler, but I figured it was the daughter who was named Lettuce, because any parent who is mean enough to name their child after bunny food should be shot. But anyway, she didn't do it, but that's where my money was. I'm only joking. But anyway, don't name your child Lettuce, that's just cruel. Okay, and we live in a day and age of bullying. Moving on. So the next book that I read was also an Agatha Christie, and this is The Man in the Brown Suit. And this one I know I'd read, and this one I loved as a child. But adult me was not as impressed. So a quick synopsis here. You have a young girl whose father was... What was the terminology for that? He wasn't quite an archaeologist, maybe a bit of an anthropologist, not sure. But anyway, so he digs up skeletons of old civilizations, etc. Probably an archaeologist. And yeah, he ends up dying. She's in her early 20s, and she's a young lady who's wanting adventure. She doesn't want to settle down and get married. She wants an adventure. And she finds one because they're in the train station. She sees this man, and he turns around and he looks past her shoulder. He gets such a fright. He steps back, falls onto the train tracks and electrocutes himself. And of course, the guy who comes to claim that he's a doctor, everyone stand back, doesn't really, well, he checks for the heart on the wrong side, but he also really does a thorough job of searching his pockets and heading off and not being seen again. I can see why I loved this as a child. I loved the idea that everybody could have an adventure. And it was set, half of it, in South Africa, which was nice because, you know, as a kid I grew up with all my adventures happening in England with Famous Five and whatever else Enid Blyton wrote. And so this was in South Africa, which meant that I could have an adventure too. However, and this is where the problem comes in, the language in this, okay, so you know you have bad words for groups of people. South Africa is extremely racist. Well, they use the bad word that you're not allowed to use. It could get you in jail, could make you lose your job if you say that word. So I'm not saying that word. But it's like the N-word in America. You don't say that word. And I was a bit shocked and horrified to find that word all over the place here when it got to South Africa. But then I thought, you know, it would have been unrealistic if Agatha Christie hadn't used that word. But I suppose my objection is more with history than with Agatha Christie. I mean, would Huckleberry Finn be as effective if he referred to Jim as Sir? You know, it's capturing. I don't know. I wasn't a fan, but I don't know if, I mean, I wouldn't change it. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't change it because we need to see where we've come from as far as history goes. But it was an unpleasant surprise. I wasn't quite ready for it. But anyway, I thought that the end was a bit mushy. There were parts that were interesting and exciting, and I liked the fact that I knew where she was going in Cape Town, etc. But yeah, I wasn't as thrilled with this one as I was when I was a child who didn't notice things that they should have, apparently. Moving on. So the next one is still for March Mystery Madness, and this one is the fifth, I can't remember. This is one of the later books in the series by Colleen McCullough. I think there's 5 books in the series, and I think this one might actually be the 5th. I'm not too sure. The next one I'm going to show you is the 3rd, because no internet, I didn't check. I just picked up the one I'd had on my shelf the longest. So in this story, it starts off with quite freaky, actually. It was a really good gripping start. You are with a young man who is in a padded room with no windows, no lights, no doors, nothing. And he is butt naked, and all he has is water. He is really, really hungry. And he wakes up realizing that he has been anesthetized and that he has been snipped. Neutered, like my poor dog. And yeah, and then you go to the cops and you realize that he is one of quite a few that have been found as far as bodies, and that he is still alive. And then you learn that there is another case still where there are 6 women who have gone missing, and there's been no sign of them either. So you're off on this trail of these 2 crimes. So this story I actually gave 1 star, which I was rather disappointed with because I really did like, well, I really enjoyed the Thornbirds by Colleen McCullough. I thought it's one of my favorite books of all time. I mean, in a list of 50 books, top 50, it would be in the top 50. But this one, You see, whereas with the Agatha Christie, The Man in the Brown Suit, it was written in the 60s and it was set in the 60s, so you can understand some of the mindset. Whereas in this one, the homophobia, it's written in 2013. There should have been something in there to go, yo, I know it would have been a bit anachronistic as far as time goes, but I just felt uncomfortable with it, knowing that it was written just the other day. So with the bodies of these young men that are found, the first thing that they jump to conclusions is that it has to be the gay community. And they go and they find these two gay guys and ask them questions, etc. And, you know, by the end of the story, the two nice gay guys end up even faking it they're straight, really. And I wasn't really a fan of that. I was also disappointed with the writing. The sentence structure wasn't logical. So you would have the sentence with something that's then developed on with adjectival phrases, and then the clause would then relate back to the first thing and not the last thing. It wouldn't be connecting to the thing that was closest to it, and it made it very disjointed to follow. Also the wording, I mean, nobody refers to their niece as niece. They refer to them as Jane or Laura. And if it's a matter of, you know, wanting to make a connection so that the reader knows the relationship between these two characters, then there's no harm in going, well, Jane looked at her uncle at the front of the room. You know, just a little odd sentence like that to make the dialogue seem a little bit more realistic. I mean, similarly with wife. I mean, my parents were married for 47 years and my father never referred to my mother as wife. Come here. I don't think that would have gone down well. Not that they ever fought, but still, it's you know, it's just unrealistic. And then, oh, the characters. There's one female in here, I think her name was Delia. Forgive me, this is where the tale really comes in, when it's been a week and a half since you've actually thought about these books. Now you have to review them. I think it's Delia. Now, she is supposed to be an exceptionally intelligent woman, but she walks around with a wardrobe that is beyond eccentric. She would need to be completely colorblind, as in seeing things just in shades of grey, to actually put these things together and not be able to compare her dress sense to anybody else's as an intelligent person. I mean, every time they describe her, she's got lipstick on her teeth. You'd think she'd rectify that error after the first two attempts. You know, clean them afterwards, wipe it off. And, I mean, even in the next book, she still has lipstick all over her teeth. So, you know, there were things like that that bugged me as well. The crime itself was interesting. Although, once again, I also felt that it was unrealistic. And it relied so much on coincidence. Look, I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil it. Don't bother about reading this. But the female cop in here, she makes two friends within the first two chapters of the book. And guess what? Both of them are responsible for both of the separate murders. I mean, come now, please. What's the chances of that happening? And then, you know, here you've got this inmate in a psychiatric hospital. He is a known serial killer. He is a psychopath galore. And there he's working on the metal lathe because this place has got everything you need to go make silencers for your weapons, you know. I mean, where's... Okay, let me stop. I didn't enjoy that. Can you tell? So moving on, I then wanted to get the last one out the way because I had this one. And, oh, I thought, well, look, she didn't tell me who anybody was in the previous book. Let me just read this one now, while I still knew who they were, and then I can sell it back. Well, sell it to Jimmy as well. But this one was not as bad. This is Naked Cruelty, also Colleen McCullough, and this one starts with the search for the serial rapist. And I must admit, the beginning was a bit, ew, because you are actually with the serial rapist as he is raping this woman. And I thank God we're in his head and not hers, because I think that would have been a bit too traumatic. But once again, we are dealing with cliched characters, coincidences from here to Mars, and things that also just seemed so blooming unrealistic. I can't even say that. Look, the crime itself was kind of interesting, but this was not one where the reader could actually solve anything. It would have just been a complete guess. It's a pretty book though. I really like the colors. They have said something nice. Yeah, it was possible for a story, but And I like Carmine in a way as a character, but he's just, I think, perhaps too perfect. You know, he's not exactly well, he's not flawed in the slightest. I mean, he's good looking, he's intelligent, he's tough and whatnot. But I like the fact that I found out where he got the dog. Yay. Moving on. March, no, middle grade March. So I'm not 100% sure if these actually are middle grade. I was under the impression that they were. So I'd read the first one in the Earthsea Quartet, which is the Wizard of Earthsea, a couple of years ago. And I know that you followed a young boy by the name of Jed, who has magical potential, and he gets sent to magical school, which is not like Hogwarts, and he ends up doing something really wrong, something about releasing shadow creatures or something, and somebody dies, and then he goes on some kind of a quest or something. That might be incorrect. It has been a couple of years, but I wasn't obviously as taken with the first book because I didn't pursue the second one, and this is a bind up of all four. Whoops, I'm showing me the front cover now. This is a bind up of all four. So I decided, what the hell, I need to, you know, read my TBR, and if I don't want books, I must get rid of them. And so I picked this up again, and I thought, you know, well, middle grade, this is the only thing I think that I've got on my shelves that's middle grade, because I'm not buying anything new, especially in the young adult middle grade range at the moment, unless it's Alex Rider. But that's a whole other story. So I picked this one up, and the first one is The Tombs of Atuan, and this one I also wasn't exactly overly impressed with. So you only meet Jed later on in the story. Not that I really remembered much about him to have made much of a connection. But you meet a young girl whose name has just gone, phew. Was it Nia? No, I can't remember. If it's important, I'll put it in the bottom of the video. And in this one, she is a child. Well, they have an empress. And when she dies, they have searched the realm for another child, a girl child, who was born at the time of her passing. And it was this child, this young girl. And she ends up being taken as the priestess, where she loses her name, etc., etc., because your name here has magical power. And she realizes, well, Jed helps her to realize things, and the two of them escape. The third book, however, is where I went, oh yes. I really, really enjoyed the third one, and that one is The Farthest Shore. And in this one, you're with Jed again, and a young guy whose name was Aaron. But anyway, he's the young prince, he's going to become king. And this was a beautiful story of the quest, where you have it's a coming of age, where this young boy, well, young man actually I should say, is learning how to be king, how to be wise, how to make wise decisions, etc. And to learn, well, becoming a good person, you know, the challenges that he faced, etc. I really, really enjoyed that one. I found it powerful. I really appreciated it, and it was what I was in the mood for. And then I read the fourth one, and the fourth one was Tehanu, something like that. And I was so looking forward to meeting this king now. And I was back with the girl in the second book, who was now an adult woman. And this is where this actually really became very interesting. Look, I'm going to put this down now. It's not the heaviest book I've read, but it's getting there. But anyway, so this is where it got really interesting, because at the end of the third one, something happens to Jed. And I was kind of worried about him, because that's not the way you would like to leave your hero. And so I started the fourth one immediately. And what Ursula Le Guin did in this was actually really brilliant, because she explored gender roles, particularly in fantasy novels, and she explored what it would be like for the people who are not the mages and magicians and the powerful, and how they would handle issues. She made it regular people. So we find out that, I wish I could remember this woman's name, that yes, she started to train with a magician, etc., and she left. She went to go get married to a farmer and have children. What was she thinking? But that is exactly what Ursula Le Guin went through. you know, her trying to find herself, her role, the power of woman. What is the power of woman? And then the power of people. I mean, they were having to defend themselves with pitchforks and not wands and staffs and things like that, which I really appreciated. I thought that was pretty awesome. So that was, I still have another mystery because, yes, but this is going to be my favorite one. Lamentation, C.J. Sansom, the 6th book in the Matthew Shardlake series. And, oh, just, I love this cover. I really love absolutely everything about this cover. I don't know why, but I really do. So, this story follows Matthew again. And in this one, he is asked by Queen Catherine Parr to assist him as the Lamentation of a Sinner, which is the book that she has written, has gone missing. And as the story starts with the burning of 4 heretics, this is serious. I mean, we all know Henry's record with wives. I'm pretty sure that, you know, well, she had reason to be worried. She had a lot of reason to be worried. So, of course, Matthew goes on the hunt for the Lamentation, and of course it is so much more than just looking for a lost book. It's a lot more than just looking for a lost book. Absolutely love this. My mom and I are sitting reading them together when there's power outages. So we read them out loud. We listen to, well, I read, she reads, we listen. And it's going down brilliantly for power outages. I mean, you can understand how long we've been without electricity if you can get through these books. And yeah, so really enjoying that one. Yeah, I could just wax on actually about Matthew Shardlake's, well, C.J. Sansom series. He really captures England in a way that makes it come alive in the 1500s. It is brilliant the way he describes Henry, and I know that he is taking some artistic license for some things because obviously they haven't documented every minute of every day. It's not like they vlogged in those days where, you know, you could have Henry Tube and go see what he was up to, or Tudor Tube. So, you know, there is artistic license in there, but he does have a PhD in history, so he obviously knows what he's talking about, and he just makes it come alive. It is vivid, it is colourful, it stinks like it should have back in those days. And yeah, the setting helps create the suspense because, you know, Henry was, he proclaimed himself, you know, the head of the church. So whatever way that his mood decided to blow for the year, everybody in England had to follow. And if you disagreed with him or were heard saying something that disagreed with his new religious ideas, you were burnt at the stake. And I must admit, that opening chapter, it was stomach curling. It was not all that fun. And I'm back. I was rudely cut off. I filled my phone. So now that I've cleared out some space, deleted some photos, and the video that I just made, I'm back now to tell you the last part, which, oh, just excuse us, there's mosquitoes everywhere. So I'm in the process of reading 3 books. The first one is How to Read Literature Like an English Professor, or How to Read Literature Like a Professor, I think, by Thomas C. Foster. And this one I'm reading on my computer because I have it as an ebook and I don't have an e-reader, and I can't read on my phone, it's too small. So I'm reading it with an app, the Kindle app on my computer, which means that when there's no power, there's no reading. But I'm finding it very, very interesting. It's written in such an accessible way, and he really makes his points very easy to understand, which I'm enjoying. I do feel that it's possibly a little bit simplistic, but at the same time I think that there were a lot of things that English professors just assumed that we did and knew to do that they didn't mention. I mean, most people I think go into studying English at varsity because they enjoy reading, not necessarily because they know about the Christ figure and all sorts of other things. So I'm finding it interesting. I don't know if I'm going to get much out of it, but I'm definitely enjoying it one way or another. I also feel that he's using a lot of simple examples, or let's say common examples. So he will refer to books like Huckleberry Finn and Pride and Prejudice, etc., where most people have read them, and not obscure stuff. And when he does go into things that people might not have read, like the Iliad, then he goes into a fair amount of detail, but he still keeps it short, sweet, and pleasantly entertaining. The next thing that I'm reading is by Ronald H. Balson, and this one is also for March Mystery Madness, and this one is called Saving Sophie, and this is proving to be quite interesting at the moment. It is set between Palestine and America, and there's this young man, well, Jack Summers, young father, well, it's pretty in his 40s, middle-aged, there we go, it's still young, whose daughter has been kidnapped. And there's a company that he worked for, and $88 million has gone missing. So, I have a feeling that there better be a red herring, otherwise it's going to be pretty obvious. And then the next thing that I'm reading is for Marching Mammoths. And it is Tombland by C.J. Sansom. Absolutely loving it. My mom and I, as I said, power outages. So we're up to there already in this one. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Although I think at this point we're so hooked right now that if the power comes back tomorrow, because today there's been no load shedding, hence the video, we will probably still carry on, because who is not going to want to read Matthew Shortlake if you can? Although this is the last one, and then, is he writing more? We need to start sending him fan mail. Please write more, especially because they're coming up to such an interesting point in time. In this one, Edward is now on the throne, and he doesn't last there for long. It's not going to happen in this book, but historically he's only there for, I think, 9 years. And then you have Lady Jane Grey, who's only there, I think, for 9 days. And then you have Mary, who's there just for a very short time, I think, what, 2 years or something, and then you have Elizabeth. So in such a short period of time, you have such a change in. I really would like to read all of that with Matthew Shortlake. I'm just wondering if he's made him a bit old for all of this, because he's already in his mid-40s, late 40s. So I don't know. Fingers crossed, please, C.J. Sansom. I don't mind if you have one of those literary errors where you suddenly knock off 30 years. I mean, I've read so many series where that happens. I really would like it to continue. Anyway, that is me for now. I'm going to see about editing, rendering, and uploading, and maybe while all of that's happening, I will film another one, because I've been tagged in at least 4 videos that I know of, and I've got to try and see if I can catch up on some booktube while I'm waiting for all of this to go on. Well, that's me for now. I hope to see you soon. If you don't, it's because I'm sitting in the dark. I need to start putting together a playlist. Whispers in the dark. And then, hello darkness, my old friend. Okay, I'm not going to sing for you. Alright, bye for now. Happy reading.